Hello, small but mighty members. I hope you're having a wonderful party. It's been going all day over there, hasn't it? Most of it I've missed because it's pretty early in the morning here. Well, definitely early for me. Um, I've just popped on here to uh, just do a little mini book chat and hopefully do a bit of a reading. First up, though, huge thanks to Janice Winter for agreeing to put this party on and host it, which was incredibly nice of her. And there are so many authors. We're all really grateful for all of the work that's gone into it. I mean, it's colossal. Also to JP Jackson, who originated the concept and organized everything and has run around and got us all into line and answered a million questions and that sort of thing. So massive thanks to him. So much has obviously gone on behind the scenes, and then all we do is trot on and prance around like a show pony and show our wares and that sort of thing. So yeah, I really, really, really want to point out how much I appreciate how much has been put into doing this, and I'm really, really happy to be here as well. Look, I even got out of bed after like 5 hours sleep, so excuse the eye bags. I've got really, really strong fluoro light here to reduce them, so I don't scare people too much. I do so much better at these things, like when it's midnight here or something, this whole Cheryl Lee Ralph thing. In the evening, the real me comes alive. I am not a morning person, so I will try not to rabbit on. I'm Colin Derham, as you might have seen from what was written down there, and I write erotic gay fiction. Now, how does that differ from romance? Well, mainly in two ways. I was influenced by an Australian literary genre called grunge lit. And it's not one of those arty genres where, you can't really understand the sentences and it gets all really deep and poetic and you've got to read everything 20 times. It's more the kind of literature where it follows a lot of very real life relationships and situations. Quite often the grunge bit means it deals with drugs or alcohol or nihilistic youth or mental health. And I've focused mostly on the last bit, like mental health, grief and loss, that sort of thing. And the books are erotic gay fiction, meaning they have a lot more bedroom scenes, or wherever it tends to happen, a lot more than your erotic romance. You might have 3 to 5 scenes there. I've got like more than 10. I think the most is 18 in a book. So they do find themselves in a lot of very salacious situations. And then it kind of crosses over a bit into romance because, oh look, I've got hair going out the way. Because the characters, my lead character always finds their soulmate, right? So it's not really sad and splitting up and that. Having said that, I do have one prequel, which is a short in a collection, where there is not that kind of happy ending. And that was because when I wrote my first 2 books, the leads in those books had already found their soulmate. And there was a lot of feedback I had emails and DMs and comments asking more about an affair that happened during the book. So I wrote that affair that happens before. And obviously these 2 guys have already found their soulmate in the book, so they can't end up together in the prequel. So that's why it's a prequel, because it leads on to the other novels. Although you can read it as a sort of short novella by itself. You don't have to read on, but you read on for the happy ending. So what was I saying there? Yeah, I will get right onto it really quickly because I'm going to try and do a reading here, and I might run out of time because I tend to rabbit on rather a lot. Huge welcome to Sam and Vin and Kathy and Janice and John. That's coming up on my screen so far, so I'm super blind. Like, I have 10% sight at best, so I will be squinting a lot. The first book I had very quickly is Hound. It actually came out after it was the second book that came out, but I wrote it first chronologically. And as I mentioned, these are all standalone, as in you can read them all by themselves, but they're just minor character crossovers. So, so the lead character in one might pop up in a smaller role in another book, but you don't have to know what happened in that book to read the other one. But the first one is Hound, and it's about Gary, who has been living with bipolar disorder since he was 18. And he's never had a relationship because he's felt too emotionally unstable. And he's kind of reached a crisis at 40 that he can't do this casual thing anymore. It's really kind of soul-destroying for him. So he stops and concentrates on himself and rebuilding himself. But right then he finds somebody that just knocks him over. He is so massively insta-love. He's just right into this man. However, this man has been in an abusive long-term relationship and has ruled out relationships. And like the only thing he can cope with is anonymous sexual encounters. So like in American, the bathhouses, like saunas, sex venues, nothing involving any names. However, he is smitten with Gary as well, but only wants to be friends with benefits. And this really badly affects Gary's mental health to the point, like, it goes through the gamut. He has breakdowns, he ends up being hospitalized. So there is that triggering content, but it does end very happily. That was Hound. Now, that guy Gary, and I've just said there's a happy ending, so it's no spoiler, him and his boyfriend Jeff appear in a smaller supporting friend roles as a couple in the next book, The Lookout, which is about Angus, who rents out 2 rooms in his apartment to 2 new men. And they fall into this massive, hot, very physically charged affair. Like, this keeps them going for several months. And your feelings develop. It gets very close. So what starts off with a big sexual bang spills over into personal relationships with each other. But it's all happened so fast that one of them has kept a major secret, and it sends the whole thing spiraling downwards. So bringing Gary in as a supportive friend into that meant that he was able to help Angus, the main character in this, through all of that drama and just provide him the support he needed. So that then brought me to the third book, which is called One Night Stand. Now, this is 3 short novellas. I'd written a couple of short novellas, and I thought, well, I can't put them up on Amazon by themselves. It just seemed to me a little bit kind of cheating that's all people got was something so short. So I whacked them together, and then I added a third one. And so this contains a very spicy short novella called Blinder, which the blind part was based, I wrote it on my own, with my own experience fairly early on when I'd lost most of my sight. I'd had terrible sight, but it had just dropped down in 2020 to legal blindness. So beginning of 2021, I wrote a story, a short story, and it covered a man who's going with his friend who, they used to have an affair, a casual affair when they're at uni. This is much later. They're nearer to 40. They go up the coast of New South Wales, and they're going to a gay wedding, and they meet 2 other friends there, friends of the other couple. You know what I mean, in the wedding. And then what ends up happening is a flirtatious romp in the swimming pool that then leads to the hotel room, and there are 4 people with legs and arms everywhere. It was really interesting trying to choreograph those physical scenes. But throughout this weekend, two of the guy and his friend develop a lot of closeness with one of the other friends each. So it looks like by the end of the weekend, which is just wild, that two very potential couples have formed. So that's like a nice little happy ending. The other two stories in here, Bear Affair and Bourbon and Cigarettes, they both involve characters from Hound and The Lookout. Bear Affair was the prequel I mentioned because the leads from those two books had this affair. So that's the detail of it. And Bourbon and Cigarettes is another one that people that had read Hound were really interested in what the boyfriend character was thinking. And Hound, which was the first book, is about Gary. So because there's a lot of confusion and he never quite knows what's going on, it's written from his perspective till the end. So rather than rehash Jeff, the boyfriend's side of the story, and just rehash all of that, I wrote a new story, which is half of it is Jeff consulting a psychoanalyst who really helps him pick apart his experiences of being in an abusive relationship and his role in how that affected his relationship with Gary. And then the other half of it is like a very happy ending in many ways between Jeff and Gary. So those two are kind of supplementary to Hound. Once again, you could just read them as a short story / novella. But, you know, they do have those characters in them. The last book is Nervous Kid. Now, this one is a bit taboo, and I'm hoping you'll get that from a little reading I've done. How long have I been going on? I'm going to be really quick. Kimberly. Hello, Kimberly. Hello, Maureen. Hello, Lou. Hello, Tal. And Frank Davis. And more people are popping up. I'm really, really happy you guys are here. So Nervous Kid is a little bit more complex. It's got a lot more tropes in it, but it's still very much erotic gay fiction. There is a lot of rumpy-pumpy in there, and it kind of has more realistic approach, like very real life, and it gets quite gritty, and there are triggers, which are in the front of the book, and like I put triggers in there because it's really, really in there. Some authors are on the side of caution and they will list every little thing, but I'm kind of, that's a major trigger, so I'll put it in. It's a second chance novel. So basically, the reading I'm going to do comes from early in the piece. Ryan Underwood and his little brother Nathan live with their widowed mother up at the top of Australia. The mother then, when he's a teenager, reveals that she has rekindled an old relationship with Joe. Eventually, Joe and his son Dominic move in with the mother. Of course, Ryan is instantly obsessed with Dominic and spends several years he's his best friend, and he's obsessed because he's 2 years older and he's really charismatic, and Ryan's quite shy. But also Ryan looks older than his age, so Dominic treats him like an equal. And that, on his 18th birthday, because it has to happen on his 18th birthday, then crosses a line and they have this wild affair. However, the whole family breaks down spectacularly, and it's not for the reasons you think. And then they don't see each other for 20 years or 22 or something years. They're close to 40 now. And the rest of the book is about how they find each other again and how they deal with the traumas and things that have kind of really affected their lives in between. And there's been plenty of them. I won't list them here because we won't get the reading done. But I will replenish my caffeine, and I will try and read from this ancient tablet, the scene. So this is the scene early on where Ryan is pulled aside by his mother and she reveals the family secret. It sounds very soap opera, but I promise, I make it plausible. So he's just, look, he'll explain it as it is, but it is right early in the book, after the prologue and the bits when he's a little child. And we'll start with his mum. Ryan, I need to talk to you. I was 14 and I just arrived home from boxing practice to find Mum hunched forward on the couch, elbows on her knees. The air conditioner was humming away in the window and she was staring at the TV, though it wasn't even switched on. I was used to Mum's dramatics. As a pretty reserved kid, I just let her carry on and kept my mouth shut. But there was a tone in the air that gave me a bad feeling in my gut. The pain of what happened to us 3 years previously still hit me as hard as it had when Dad had just died. Fuck, don't tell me something else like that. Mum patted the couch next to her, not looking at me. My heart started thumping with fear. I was barely conscious of my movement as I sat down. Sweetie, you're a sensible boy, and I know you can handle what I'm about to say. She lit the cigarette she had dangling between her fingers and drew in a deep drag before launching into her monologue. You don't know this, but I was a wild girl when I was young. No shit, Mum, as if I couldn't have guessed that. After I finished my teaching diploma, I decided I wasn't ready to start my career. I took off to go backpacking around South America. I had a lot of fun, met a lot of wonderful people, and I made a lot of mistakes. She glanced at me sideways, but I remained expressionless. Anyway, I fell in love with a man in Brazil, and she paused for a second. I could see her hands trembling slightly. And I had a baby. Now she turned to look at me, her face twisted with contrition. I was overwhelmed, Ryan. I became so depressed, so I did something I'm not proud of. I took off back to Australia and left your brother with Joe and his family. I could see the tears in Mum's eyes as she smoked away furiously. I know she was expecting me to be shocked, but it was like I was hearing the plot of a daytime soapie. It didn't seem quite real. Over and above all this, it sounded just so like Mum. After studying me for a reaction she wasn't quite getting, she averted her eyes. I've never forgiven myself. After I settled back in Sydney, I met your dad. We married pretty quickly and, well, then you came along. She ground out her half-finished cigarette and sat up a bit, trying to smile at me. I kept in touch occasionally. I'd write letters to Joe and sometimes I'd hear back from him. Fidgeting with her hands, she reached for her Peter Jacksons and lit another one. There's more. Joe and his son. She looked at me again. Your brother, Dominic, moved over here to Perth from Brazil when you were little. As if answering a question I hadn't actually asked, she blurted, I never saw them, you have to believe me. I loved your father, I love my boys. I nodded slowly, giving her the faintest of acknowledgement. She looked mildly relieved. But since your father died, I thought about them both a lot. And in the last year, Joe and I have talked constantly on the phone. I suddenly recalled the many times I could hear Mum chatting away in her bedroom at night for ages, the content of her conversation obscured by the cyclonic noise of the ceiling fan. So, that's what she was up to. I'd been too busy playing with my dick to give it much thought. As long as I could hear her voice carrying on faintly in the next room, I knew she wouldn't be able to barge in and catch me masturbating in bed. Mum grabbed my hand, squeezing it. I'm telling you all this now because Joe's got a job in Darwin and he's just moved up here. You might be seeing a lot of him, and her voice halted abruptly, and she fixed her gaze on me with pleading intensity. You're going to meet your brother. It sounded weird. Nathan was my brother, not some random kid a couple of years older than me. But I wasn't appalled. I was intrigued. Mum's eyes didn't falter as she waited for my verdict. That's cool, Mum. I'm sure they're nice. I met Joe Duarte first, shortly afterwards. By that stage, I'd read enough Judy Blume books to know that I was supposed to hate whoever my mum dated after losing our dad. But Joe was great. He told me his real name was Jose, though people thought were too dumb and to pronounce it right, and they thought it was Josie when they read it written down. He had an accent, but he spoke English totally fine. Joe made a big effort with us. He'd take us to eat at Hungry Jack's. He even took us to the movies. He came and cheered me on at my boxing demos and competitions. He was awesome like that. And Mum was happy again. It was all good as far as I was concerned. Then there was Dominic Duarte. I couldn't believe my eyes when I first met him soon after Joe. He was fucking beautiful. Even at 16, he was a man. I mean, I already looked a lot older than 14. I was shaping up to have my dad's hairy body. My voice had broken to a full baritone. But Dominic was something else. He had that air about him. He was cocky and confident, with the most gorgeous white-toothed smile. The kind of bastard who could get away with what he wanted from anyone by charming the pants off them. Dominic had the same olive skin as his dad. He didn't look like Mum or Nathan. He certainly didn't look like me. I took after my dad. If I hadn't known differently, I would have thought Joe and Dominic were Spanish because all those hot Latino boys and men I'd seen on TV had darker, cinnamon kind of skin. But Dominic told me a lot of Brazilians and Argentinians looked more like Spanish people with lighter skin and dark hair. His sun-kissed complexion was beautifully complemented by his piercing, darkest brown eyes and short, thick black hair. I just couldn't stop looking at him. I was mesmerized from the word go. Since I was 12 and had worked out that my dick wasn't just for pissing, I'd realised that all I wanted to think about was boys. I would videotape racy foreign movies on SBS on TV, hoping to catch a glimpse of a male arse. Very occasionally, I was even lucky enough to see a flash of penis. Whenever I had a moment of privacy, I would jerk off frantically over those scenes, making liberal use of the pause and rewind buttons. Most of the time, though, I'd have to settle for wanking in my room in the middle of the night when Mum and Nathan were safely shut in their own bedrooms. My privacy issues would become a lot easier, however, when Mum and Joe sat me down just before the start of the next school year. Ryan, sweetie, Mum said gently, you know how Joe and Dominic have been coming over here a lot? She paused, carefully choosing her words. Well, now that Joe and I are in a serious relationship, we think it would be much easier for everyone if they both moved in with us. My heart began racing a mile a minute. It was nearly impossible to keep a poker face, but somehow I managed. Sure, I really like Joe and Dominic, I said. I looked over at Joe, smiling at me, good-natured as ever. Then I looked at Mum again. She was still all apprehensive. I could tell there was more to it. She cleared her throat. Dominic's going to need a bedroom. It's a big change for him too, and I think it might be a nice gesture if you gave him yours. She eyed me closely once more. I was still poker-faced, giving nothing away. So, sweetie, I know how much you used to love the caravan. Would you think about moving into there? She glanced at Joe, getting his approval over something, then turned back to me. Joe will be moving his big TV and VCR into our living room. So we think that it's only fair that you can have our old TV and VCR in the caravan, seeing as you're giving up your bedroom. I was turning cartwheels inside, just about pissing myself with glee. But all I gave Mum and Joe was an affable little smile. Sure, that sounds fair, I told them in a breezy tone. Mum turned to Joe, her face dripping with relief. I could hardly believe my luck. The weather was stinking hot and the caravan had air conditioning. The bedrooms in our house didn't, and their ceiling fans were woefully inadequate in the hotter months. Plus, I got the privacy of my own little oasis and my own TV and VCR. And Mum and Joe think I've made a huge sacrifice. In amongst all my excitement, I nearly forgot the cherry on top of all of this. Dominic was coming to live with us. Other than the fact I was hopelessly infatuated with him, he was fun. Every time he visited, his enthusiasm sucked me right in. He included me, even though I was 2 years younger than him. And he was a bit of a bad boy too. At his suggestion, we'd steal cigarettes from Mum and Joe and run down to the park to smoke them on the play equipment. Or he'd show up to my house with one of those bicycle drink bottles filled with orange juice and vodka he'd stolen from his dad, and we'd sit in the garden getting pissed long after Mum and Joe had gone to bed. I couldn't wait for him to move in. I could go on further, guys, but it's 10 o'clock and I've used up all my time. But thank you so much for coming and listening to this. I don't now have time to do a giveaway post, but I will just do it here. If anyone wants to go in a draw for winning any of these books, they're all listed on my link tree. Now, I've only put the link tree there because apparently other authors are having difficulty with Facebook getting annoyed that there are too many links. So on my link tree, there are all the books there. If you just put down in the comments if you're interested in what book you like, great. And I leave that there for a few days because these competitions will usually show up for several days, like 4 days or something in your feed. So it just gives people a chance if they haven't seen the posts. And a quick reminder that all of the posts that authors are putting up, if you want to get the latest ones, you just go up to the top and you probably know this, you click new posts. So it'll bring up the latest ones. But Facebook will normally default to recent activity. So it will just show the posts that people are commenting on right now, even if it's older. That's all the housekeeping. Thank you so much. And Pauline, thank you for coming to see me as well. And Alex and Shane, so good. And Jem and Mark, I don't know you, Mark. It's good. And MD, I don't know how to say your last name. NEU? No. I'm so sorry. I'm really, really happy that you guys made it. I'm going to get off here now because it's now 10:02 and I'm really, really sorry. I want to thank my mum and my agent and my cousin Linda and Guard. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy your party. And there's plenty more coming up tomorrow. Big hugs to you all. Bye-bye.